Is up, Not So Pro Football Talk? This is Vince the Prince back again for another Power Rankings. Here we go, guys. We're getting closer and closer to the playoffs, so I want to change this up a little bit, just a tiny bit. Of course, I'm going to go through the grading criteria. Offensive grading will be points scored, offensive efficiency, and strength of defensive matchup. Defensive grading will be scored as points allowed, defensive efficiency, and strength of offensive matchup. So here we go. The twist here is that I'm going to factor in playoff seeding percentages. So basically, there are teams that have already solidified themselves as being 100% locked down for the playoffs, even if they lose out. But there are some teams, including my Seattle Seahawks over here, who need to win in order to boost their chances. If they lose this game, of course, their chances plummet just a little bit. Not as crazy as some other teams, but that's how I'm going to factor this in too, because these are must-win weeks. So I want to make it part of these power rankings. So here we go. So at number 32, I'm going to have the New York Giants. At this point in time, the Giants have 0% chance of making the playoffs. They've been eliminated a long time ago, sitting at 2-10. I mean, this past week said it all. They lost to the Cowboys, which is kind of expected, but how good are the Cowboys right now, too? So the New York Giants are just really down there in the rankings for me. It's not going to get better for them. I think next week against New Orleans, who is sitting at 4-8 at this point in time, is going to get the dub, even though this is in New York. I just feel like the Giants really have nothing going for them. That locker room is deteriorating, and the head coaching there from Brian Daboll is just not very good. At number 31, it's another team that has 0% chance of making the playoffs here. It is the Las Vegas Raiders, who were at 32 last week. This week, they just did not have a good game. Somebody also sitting at 2-10 at this point in time. Lost to Kansas City. Kind of expected. They stayed in this game, so even though they lost, that's why they moved up for me. Next week, it's not going to be another easy game because none of their games are easy. They're going against Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay. So, of course, this is going to be a tough game for them. Really don't see them winning this. We'll have to just wait and see where the Las Vegas Raiders fall. Do they land at 32 by the end of this, or do they stay a little bit ahead of the 6, I guess you can call it? We'll see. At number 30 here, I have a team that has finally had a chance. It's less than 1% of a chance to win their division and possibly get to the playoffs because it's not solidified there. They would have to win out and everything would have to go their way. It is the Jacksonville Jaguars, sitting at 2-10 as well. So you would think that they'd be 100% out of the picture, but not just yet. So this past week, they lost to Houston. This might have given them a bigger chance if they won this game to make the playoffs going into week 14. But they lost 23-20. It is what it is. Jacksonville is not really fighting to make the playoffs at this point in time. So many injuries. Trevor Lawrence went down. He's put on IR now. Super sad. Next week, maybe Mac Jones can get them over the hump. They're going to play Tennessee. They could possibly get a win here. I don't know how likely this will be, but they would have to have everybody playing at their best game in order to play Tennessee and beat them in Tennessee. So we'll see. And sitting here at 29, I have another team that has basically less than 1% chance here of making the playoffs. So, of course, there is a possibility in this world where the Titans could win the division as well. They would have to win out. Everybody in the division would have to lose. It's a less than 1% chance. So it really doesn't seem like it's going to happen. But the Titans this past week went ahead and lost against Washington. It was a tough game. Lost 19-42. An expected loss, but I did not expect them to lose by this much. I thought they were playing a little bit better at this point in time. Next week, it's not going to be an easy win or anything like that, but I think it should be a win, especially with the injuries that the Jaguars have, since I just talked about that. Tennessee, if you don't win this game, it's going to look very bad on you, and I won't know what to say next week, so don't lose. At number 28, I'm going to have the New Orleans Saints. Their percentage of actually winning this division is actually at exactly 1%. So The Saints, they are sitting at 4-8 right now. Their division is possibly a little bit easier to win, so I don't know why this isn't higher than 1% chance. I think it's because the Saints have lost against the Falcons and Bucks outright, basically. So that's why this past week their odds dropped from 3% to 1%. This past week they took the L against the Los Angeles Rams, 14-21. Next week is a must-win game for them against the New York Giants, and I think it should be a win, even though they are going to New York. At this point in time, New York is just really not playing for anything at this point in time, like I said earlier. And New Orleans maybe has a little bit of life going. Of course, Taysom Hill going down with that injury is horrid for them because he's their Army Swiss knife there. But they still have Kamara. They have the possibility of having Olave back in the season, maybe week 17, week 18, maybe even as early as 15 or 16. We'll have to wait and see what happens with his concussions there. But New Orleans, it is what it is. You're sitting at 28. Here at 27, I'm going to have the New York Jets. I mean, they took the L to my squad, losing 21-6. And as we know, they have a less than 1% chance of making the playoffs. I really don't see them ever making it into the playoffs this year. So, again, not shocked at all at this point in time. But sitting at 3-9, it just doesn't look really good for them. Next week, though, they possibly could set the upset here for a divisional win against Miami. I really highly doubt it at the way they're playing right now. They're just so dysfunctional. They can get points on the board, but they can't keep it up. So going against the 5-7 Miami Dolphins in Miami, I think this should be a loss. Here at 26, I'm going to have the New England Patriots. And at this point in time, they are out of the playoffs. There's no way for them in that AFC East division to even have a chance sitting at 3-10. They should go into a late bye week this week, so much needed for them, I guess. Nothing to really play for, so nothing to really help them out at this point in time. This past week, they went ahead and lost against the Indianapolis Colts in a nail biter, down to the wire there with a 2-point conversion completed by Anthony Richardson of the Indianapolis Colts. And they took the L. I mean, I expected them to lose here, just the way Indianapolis is playing. I just didn't think it was going to be this close. So next week, again, as I said, they should have a bye week there, so nothing is really going to change for them. They could move up, could move down, depending on the teams that are below them. But for now, they'll sit at 26. And sitting at 25 here, I'm going to have the Dallas Cowboys. And lucky for you Dallas Cowboy fans, there is a possibility of you guys still making the playoffs out there somehow, some way. Everything would have to go your way, of course. There's no chance for you to win the division, but there's a possible chance for you to make the playoffs because of everybody else in the NFC losing, which I really don't see happening. But sitting at 5-7, again, your odds dropped from 20% last week to 1% this week. So even though you got the dub here, 27-20 against the New York Giants, like you should, other teams won that really decreased your odds of making it to the playoffs at this point in time. So next week it is a must win. The week after that it is a must win. But of course, going against Cincinnati this next week on Monday Night Football, me and Reed will be there. It should be hopefully a good one. Stats and records would say it would be, but again, I think Cincinnati might run away with this one. So Cowboys fans, hold on to that hope, that 1% of you possibly making it, but don't wish upon a star too much because I highly doubt it'll happen. Not in this world that we're in. And sitting at 24 here, this one is sad for me to say that there's less than a 1% chance of them actually making it to the playoffs. They would have to win their division in order to do so. Sitting at 3-9, it's going to be the Carolina Panthers. This past week, they took the tough L against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, losing 23-26. Like I said, a divisional loss there, so it's not good on them, and that's why their playoff chances just decreased again, even more, I guess you could say. They were already less than 1% in making the playoffs last week, but just again, even just a tiny bit smaller here because they're not ahead of the sticks at all, getting that L to the Bucks. So at this point in time, Panthers are just playing for some tenure here, I guess. Bryce Young is playing well, in my opinion, and I think he will continue to towards the rest of the season. So this is just basically setting up for next year, hopefully getting some good picks and climbing upon this. So Panthers, I'm rooting for you. Bryce Young, I'm rooting for you. Dave Canales, ex-Seahawks quarterback coach, I'm rooting for you. Alrighty, here sitting at 23, I'm going to have the Indianapolis Colts. They have one of the highest odds of any team that I've said so far, sitting at 20%. They are 6-7, only maybe 2.5 games behind of the Texans at this point in time. This past week took the good win against the New England Patriots, 25-24. So it is what it is. I mean, next week they have the bye week, so again, they really can't boost their chances at this point in time going into week 14. But I still think Indy has a possibility of getting rested here and hopefully going on a run. It would be super amazing to see Anthony Richardson make the playoffs. But at this time, if the Texans win next week, it might dwindle their odds. Here, sitting at 22, this is again another team that has the highest odds to make the playoffs as they are leading their division at this point in time. Can you guess it? It's the Atlanta Falcons. So here, sitting at 6-6, they aren't the best team, uh, that you could probably think of. In my opinion, I think that the Bucks should win this division again for I think the fourth or fifth straight time. But we'll have to wait and see how the Bucks do going into these next few games. But Atlanta took the L here to LA, so maybe that helps the Buccaneers just a little bit more. They lost 13-17, and of course next week they're gonna face Minnesota. So I think they're going to take this L here as it is in Minnesota, and Minnesota really wins games fairly easily, but again, they're always nail biters. So at this point in time, I really don't think Atlanta Falcons will be moving up, in my opinion, and they're probably not going to lead the division next week. So I'll have to wait and see. But Atlanta, you're going to have to win. Here, sitting at 21, the playoff chances for this team have just dropped tremendously after taking another L that they probably should not have. But at this point in time, this team has no defense, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals. So sitting at 4-8, they have a 1% chance after last week having a 28% chance winning the division or at least making the playoffs, actually. So again, dropping to 1%, it's very unlikely. They'd have to have a lot of things go right in their way in the AFC North. I don't think it's going to happen. Of course, we only have 5 more games, so they would have to win out at this point in time. This past week, they took the L to Pittsburgh, a divisional loss that really tanked their opportunity to make the playoffs at this point in time. But again, next week I think they should win. They're going to face the Cowboys on Monday Night Football, so we will be there, me and Reed, to watch that one with y'all on live for the live play-by-play. So tune in. I think it's going to be a good one, and I think this is one that Cincinnati will win. Here, sitting at 20, I'm going to have the Chicago Bears. Again, they have a less than 1% chance of making the playoffs at this point in time. It was 18% last week. But of course, this week, taking the L to the Detroit Lions like we expected, 20-23, just decreased their chances of making the playoffs possibly. But again, sitting at the bottom of their division, as you can see here on the graphic, I really don't know what this team is going to be able to do the rest of the season. They're going to face up against the San Francisco 49ers on the 3 o'clock window on Sunday. So I think this one is going to be a slugfest somehow. Both these teams are not playing their best football at this point in time. Maybe Chicago has the edge here, in my opinion. But maybe San Francisco gets it going, or Brock Purdy having another healthier week coming into week 14. So again, this is a win now time for San Francisco. They need to change their odds tremendously with winning this game. I really don't know how it's going to work in their favor, but there's always a way. So Chicago, please ruin the chances for San Francisco by winning this game this week. But if not, it's okay. I don't mind. At number 19, this is probably one of the highest percentage chances of this team making the playoffs in the bottom 16 teams. So right now I'm going to talk about the Houston Texans. Yes, they're all the way down here at 19. Even though they got the W against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was a close one, as I predicted, 23-20. Again, they just don't play well in divisional games against Jacksonville. And even though Jacksonville is sitting at 2-10, the Texans look pretty good. So again, 95% chance of making the playoffs if I haven't said it already. But they'll get the bye week next week, so it's another rest time for them to probably get everything going. So that way, going towards the rest of the season, maybe in this week 15 for them is their next game. Maybe they'll lock down the playoff spot there and take the division, or just lock in a solid spot into the playoffs. We'll have to wait and see. But right now, the Texans need to play better. At number 18 here, I'm going to have the Miami Dolphins. Their chances of making the playoffs have been pretty steady for the past few weeks. Last week it was 16. This week it's 13, going down just a little bit. So again, they won't be able to win this division because the Bills have outright just locked it down. They've won the division already. There's no chances, even if the Dolphins win the rest of their games and tie the division somehow with the Bills, they have the tiebreaker. So that's how this is going to fall. But taking the L here to the Packers, 17-30, did not help their chances at all with that. And that is why the Bills locked down this week by getting the dub against the 49ers. But next week, the Miami Dolphins will take on the New York Jets, another divisional matchup. Again, this division is just not good besides the Bills. Nobody else is above 500 here, so maybe this is going to be a good game at the 12 o'clock window. I don't know. I think Miami should win because I just don't believe in the Jets whatsoever. So Miami, just get the job. Here, sitting at 17, I have one of my favorite teams to watch at this point in time, and that's because the Cleveland Browns. They've been playing pretty good with Jameis Winston out there. They put a lot of points on the board. Even though they took the L this Monday night, as you saw with me and Reed on the live play-by-play, they lost 32-41 to the Denver Broncos. It was a tough sledding game, but with less than 1% chance of making the playoffs, I don't see them like the other teams with less than 1% chance of making it doing that. They have a tough matchup again this week, going back-to-back in the last 3 weeks, facing the Pittsburgh Steelers, basically. Steelers sit at 9-3, flip that, and that's where the Cleveland Browns record is, 3-9. They upset them last time, but this time it's in Pittsburgh. I don't think it's going to happen with the terrible towels there. I think Pittsburgh should win this game pretty easily, even though Cleveland will probably make it interesting. So, rooting for you, Cleveland, but again, I think it's going to be a tough week. Sitting at 16, I'm going to have San Francisco 49ers. At this point in time, their chances of making the playoffs are 4%. And amazingly, they have a 3% chance of actually taking the division. Last week, it was a 45% chance of them making the playoffs. So this L that they just took to the Bills, which was a pretty bad one, 10-35, just decreased their chances tremendously and increased every other team in the division's chances, a little bit. So it is what it is. The 49ers just really can't get anything going with all these injuries. Again, losing 2 more players in Christian McCaffrey and Mason there in the running back room. So it's up to Isaac Guerrero to take over and possibly give them a little bit of a boost. So this week they're going to be going into Levi Stadium and facing up against the Bears. It should be a good game in my opinion, like I said, at the 3:25 o'clock window. I think San Francisco could win this game. I'm hoping the Bears do, just so, I can give AJ the cut loose. You guys lost again. It's probably not going to make playoffs. Let's just enjoy football. Let's enjoy fantasy because I'm pretty sure he's made a lot of fantasy playoffs there. So, again, sometimes your team just doesn't make the playoffs. And at this point in time, that's the San Francisco 49ers with very slim odds to do so. At 15, I'm going to have another NFC West team. And this team actually has a pretty good chance of making the playoffs and winning the division. So, again, this is the Arizona Cardinals. They have a 37% chance of making the playoffs and a 36% chance of winning the division. So again, I think it's very possible sitting at 6-6. They're going to go up against the Seahawks this week after taking the L to the Minnesota Vikings 22-23. It was a tough game. Minnesota came back right at the last second, basically. And that's usually what Arizona does. So I'm glad that they got a taste of their own medicine there. But this week, it is in Arizona versus the Seattle Seahawks. Should be an interesting one. This one's basically going to show who's most likely going to win the division. So if the Seattle Seahawks win, it's most likely going to be them. If it's the Arizona Cardinals, possibly them. But then again, don't forget about the Rams. We'll see what happens in this division. It's going to be interesting. Here at number 14, speaking of those Rams, it's the LA Rams. So again, another team in this division who has a decent chance of winning the division. Funny enough, going to the playoffs and winning the division is possibly their only route because they're both at 23%. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, the NFC West is always interesting. It's always nail biters. The last few years it hasn't been because the 49ers have been just dominant. But the Rams are looking decent. Sometimes they don't. But again, they took the dub against New Orleans 21-14 this past week. It was an all right win, in my opinion. I thought they should have won by a lot more. But this week is going to probably diminish their spirits here. Even though it's at home, they're playing the Buffalo Bills. And I don't think it's going to be a good game for them. The Bills' defense has been getting better and better, as I've been saying. And the LA Rams sometimes just can't get it going. So I think it's going to be one of those games. If you have anybody on those fantasy teams, hopefully they're just a flex spot for you at this point in time because I don't see them having a great game. But we'll have to wait and see. They could prove me wrong, and they might even pull the shocker. And sitting here at number 13, why not keep it going, guys? I'm going to have the last NFC West team here back to back to back to back. And it's going to be my Seattle Seahawks, who have the best chance right now of winning this division and making the playoffs from the NFC West. 41% chance of making the playoffs, regardless if they win the division or not, and a 38% chance of winning the division, only 2% higher than the Cardinals. So it is going to be a tight race here. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but again, we took the dub against the Jets here, 26-21 this week. Next week, we have the Arizona Cardinals, like I said earlier. Sitting at 7-5 going into the desert, it's going to be a tough game as Arizona is favored to win this one so far on most betting apps. I don't know, man. I think we can do it. I hope we can, but we'll have to wait and see. Last game, we got saved by a bunch of penalties, so hopefully the offense gets going this week like they did against the Arizona Cardinals somewhat. But again, our offense is looking great. The defense is looking much better, but we can't always rely on the defense to continue to play like that every single week. So, Gino, offense, JSN, DK Metcalf, K9, Charbonnet. I mean, maybe even getting Lockett in there. We just need everybody to play their best game. So that way we can kind of lock this thing down, hopefully, and get a very good chance of making the playoffs. We'll see. Rooting for my Seahawks. Sitting at 12 here, the odds are going to probably jump up for the rest of these teams, going above 60%, maybe even higher like this team. The LA Chargers, they have a very good chance of making the playoffs this year. A lot of people really didn't think they would because of the entire coaching change, the entire roster change on the offensive side, a little bit on the defense too. They're losing some key players, but they sit here at 94% chance of making the playoffs. Only 5% of winning the division because of the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, that is what it is. But the Chargers are just playing good, in my opinion. They took the dub here against Atlanta. It was a narrow victory, 17-13. But I think going into this next week, it's going to be tough sledding, but at least they have the playoffs kind of locked down. Maybe they'll upset again against the Kansas City Chiefs this week. And I say that again because they've done it in the past, not this year. But going into Kansas City, you never know. Could happen. I'm rooting for y'all. Alrighty, here at number 11, I have the team that's actually ranked second in their division at this point in time. It's going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I know when I was talking about the Chargers, I said that teams would have a very high chance of making the playoffs. And I think the Buccaneers' chances should be a lot higher because their rest of the season is pretty good. So getting the dub this past week against Carolina 26-23 moved them up from 34% last week to 49% chance of making the playoffs this week. So I think they can go ahead and keep that going. this next week against the Las Vegas Raiders. It should be a dub for them, and their chances of winning the division here should increase, as well as making the playoffs. So Tampa Bay, as I said, has one of the best rest of seasons schedules here, and I think they're going to take advantage of it. So with Mike Evans back, Cade on the field, both running backs playing pretty well in their respective roles, I think this should be a lockdown for Tampa Bay to win this division. Like I said in the beginning of the season, I didn't think the Falcons would win. I thought Tampa Bay should, and hopefully it ends up being that way. Here at number 10, this division is wild. I mean, there are 3 teams in this division that basically are 99% chance or more of making the playoffs. So just with great records, I'm going to have the Vikings here at number 10. They have a 99% chance of making the playoffs, sitting at 10-2. Of course, this past week, taking the dub against the Arizona Cardinals 23-22 really helped them out in keeping that record pretty dang great. Next week, they're going to go against the Atlanta Falcons, like I said earlier in this video. I think Minnesota should win this one. It might be tighter than you want it to be, so you might want to favor the Atlanta Falcons to maybe cover. But then again, I could also see the Minnesota defense reviving themselves since Atlanta just has not been functional on offense. And this one could be an easy dub at the 12 o'clock window for Minnesota. So they'll probably lock down their chances of making the playoffs if they win this game, along with 2 other teams that are in the division that I have not talked about. And surprise, surprise, here at number 9, I have the Washington Commanders. They've been in and out of this position and hovering around the top 10 or right outside pretty much the entire time that I've been doing these power rankings. So I'm really proud of them as a team, sitting at 8-5 with how cool an 85% chance of making the playoffs. Only 2% of winning the division here, so I don't think that will happen, sadly. But making the playoffs with a rookie quarterback and basically a new type of style head coaching staff there, along with some coordinators, is pretty dang cool. I like that the Commanders are really working this out with Jaden Daniels, probably the best pick in the first round, in my opinion, besides the Seahawks and Byron Murphy. I just had to slide that in there. But the Eagles are playing pretty dang good. Of course, they had that shock earlier these past few weeks where they took some L's. But this week, they made a statement, winning 42-19 against the Tennessee Titans. It is exactly what they needed because going into the bye week in Week 14 is just going to help recharge this team and hopefully solidify their chances of making the playoffs with a few wins after the bye week. So again, this is another team that I'm rooting for just to make sure we have some new teams in the playoffs because it's always great to see new competition. And I think Washington has a good chance of upsetting some teams. And here we are, another team with a rookie quarterback. It's going to be the Denver Broncos, sitting at number 8. They have a 79% chance of getting to the playoffs, less than 1% of winning the division because, of course, Chargers and Chiefs are just probably going to be ahead of them the rest of the season. Maybe the Broncos go up to second in the division. That would be cool to see. But yeah, 79% of making the playoffs here, sitting at 8-5. They took the dub this past week against the Browns on Monday Night Football. If you saw with me and Reed on the play-by-play, it was a great game. High-flying offenses. Defenses were getting in there and making plays too, but a lot of penalties on them. So 41-32 over the Cleveland Browns. Next week, they're going to have a bye week as well, just like the Washington Commanders right before them. So again, I think they should end up making the playoffs somehow. I do think they have the possibility of overtaking the LA Chargers. I think the Denver Broncos are a better team at this point in time. That's why I have them ahead of them in the power rankings. So I'm rooting for Denver. It's going to be cool to see. I know Reed really doesn't like the Denver organization because of who's their coach. But we won't talk about that too much. I think Denver has a good shot of making it to the playoffs too and possibly upsetting some teams. All right, sitting here at number 7, they dropped for me this week, but they have a great chance of making the playoffs, and it actually increased even though they took the L this past week. So pretty crazy. It's just how it happens. I don't know, but the Ravens. Baltimore, I don't know how you did it going from 95% chance making the playoffs last week to 98% of chance making it this week. It's probably because some other teams lost. So yeah, that helps. But they have a 38% chance of winning the division over the Steelers, who are basically 1.5, 2.5 games, however you want to say it, uh, over the Ravens at this point in time. So again, getting the loss here against Philadelphia, 19-24, somehow helped their chances. But again, next week they're going to have a bye week like the two teams ahead of them. Should serve them well so they can get this team a little bit healthier, a little bit more rested, and then go into week 15 and hopefully win some games, maybe even win the division. We'll see. Speaking of that other team, I'm going to have the Steelers here at 6. Again, they have a 98% chance of also making the playoffs, so fairly high. Only sitting like 1.5 to 2.5 games above the Ravens because of the Ravens not having their bye week yet. So again, the Steelers could go up 2 games here if they can get the dub this week. But this past week, they got the dub against the Bengals, their divisional rival. It was a high-flying offensive game, and I love to see Russell Wilson throwing for more than 400 yards. It was awesome to see. So they won 44-38 this past week. Next week, they're going to have another divisional rival in the Browns, and it could be a shocker again, but this one's at home, so I think Denver's got this locked down as long as they can continue to play at a high level. Cleveland might shock them again, but I think this time they have less of a chance of doing so. So Pittsburgh should go up 2 games against Baltimore, but let's see if we're shocked this week. Alrighty, here at number 5, I'm going to have the Green Bay Packers. Yes, Reed, your team is back in the top 5. Maybe not as high as you would want them to be at this point in time, but sitting at 9-3, they have a 99% chance of making the playoffs. Last week it was 76, so a big boost after taking the dub here against the Miami Dolphins this past week, 30-17. Next week, though, Thursday, tonight, it's going to be crazy. Green Bay versus Detroit. Reed and AJ will be live watching this for a play-by-play. So go ahead and join. Make sure you stay updated. Click that notification bell with NSP Football Talk. So that way you don't miss any play-by-plays. You don't miss any release videos. You don't miss any lives other than the lives that we do for the play-by-plays. So this one should be pretty dang good. I'm looking forward to watching this one, eating some snacks, laying down, relaxing, and waiting for Friday to come too, because that's when I get paid my first big boy paycheck. So I'm ready for that too. But this game I am super excited for. It should be a brawl again by these two teams, and this one's going to be in Detroit, so inside the dome. So should be a good one. Make sure you watch. So here at number 4, we're going to get into some teams that have already locked down the playoffs. And this one is one of the first teams to do it. It's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, falling to 4 this week. Again, the reason I have this like that is because they barely won again against a 2-10 team. Las Vegas Raiders only losing by 2 points to the Kansas City Chiefs, and they almost had the game-winning drive. And again, it looked a little skeptical here of how the Raiders just messed up at that point in time, but I'm not going to get into all that mumbo-jumbo here. Raiders lost, Chiefs won. Chiefs are 11-1 with a 100% chance of making the playoffs, 95% chance of winning their division at this point in time. I think it's pretty much locked down for both. I don't think Kansas City will lose many more games this season, if any at all. So it might be an almost perfect season going into the playoffs and possibly making the Super Bowl here, as their chances at this point in time are at 11% for Super Bowl to make the Super Bowl and actually win it. So we'll have to wait and see. Next week, they're going to go ahead and have the LA Chargers to play up against. It's going to be a good one on Sunday night. I'm going to be watching this one. Hopefully, it's not a lot of flags. Hopefully, they just let these two teams play, and maybe it'll be a good one. Maybe the Chargers could possibly upset against the Chiefs. We'll see. Make sure you tune in on Sunday night and join the Discord so you can talk about the game with us all game long. Sitting here at number 3, I'm basically going to give this team a 100% chance. They have a higher than 99% chance of getting to the playoffs and a 98% chance of winning their division. It's the Philadelphia Eagles, who are looking monstrous right now with the run game, with the pass game, with the defense stepping up, with these young guys all around, and the new additions of Saquon Barkley. So the Eagles are sitting at 10-2. I mean, this past week they got the dub against the Baltimore Ravens, which is a very, very tough team. So they ended up jumping them the past few weeks, and it's very deserved. So 24-19 is not a big win, but against the big team and a great team in the Baltimore Ravens, I think it was well deserving of them moving up against the Chiefs on this power rankings here. So next week, they're going to have the Carolina Panthers. I think this one's going to be a good game. Do I think Philadelphia beats the Carolina Panthers by more than one touchdown? Very likely. I think Bryce Young will play well, but against this defense, it's going to be a whole nother thing. So again, Philadelphia should win this one, move to 11 wins and only 2 losses, and solidify their spot in the playoffs and the division, all that good stuff. So congratulations, Philadelphia fans, and of course to my uncle, who is a Philly fan. You guys are back on top, so enjoy it. So sitting at number 2, this is another team that I'm just going to give the benefit of the doubt that they're going to make the playoffs 100%. Whether that's winning the division at sitting at 86% chance right now, it's going to be the Detroit Lions. Yes, guys, I don't have Detroit at number 1 anymore. I think they haven't been playing their best football lately. Only getting the dub here, 23-20 against the Chicago Bears, was not it for me. They should have won by more than a touchdown, in my opinion, but they just couldn't get that offense going against the tough defense against the Chicago Bears. It's a divisional rivalry. I won't say much about it. I think Detroit will continue to play well and continue to win. Next week, they're going to go ahead and have the Green Bay Packers tonight, basically, when this video airs. So it should be a good one. I think Detroit should win this one at home, but we could very well see an upset. And that is why I have the Detroit Lions falling down to 2, because there's a possibility, and it's pretty high in my opinion right now, the way they're playing, that they could lose against the Green Bay Packers. So it is December, and Reed says the Packers win in December. So let's see if they can start the first week of December and their first matchup here with a dub. And here we go, guys, at number 1. It is a team that has already locked down their division. It is the Buffalo Bills, 100% locked to win the division already, no matter if they lose every single game from here on out, and 100% to make the playoffs, no matter if they lose every single game from here on out. So again, this past week, they demolished the 49ers, sadly, for you 49ers fans, 35-10. I turned this game off at halftime because I just couldn't see the massacre. Because, again, it kind of sucks. You know, you got a lot of friends, a lot of fans here on the channel that are 49ers fans. I know I'm a Seahawks fan, but I'm not, for lack of a better word, a D-bag. So, of course, I just don't wish any injuries upon any team. And Christian McCaffrey and Mason going down is not good for y'all. If anything, I would want to beat y'all in the division with y'all healthy. So y'all with all these injuries doesn't make it that much sweeter if we possibly win the division this year. But next week, the Bills are going to go against the LA Rams, another NFC West divisional team. So I hope the Buffalo Bills win here again and take down another notch on the NFC West teams here. We'll have to wait and see. I think it's a pretty solidified win for them, but we'll see if they pull the gas pedal back and, not play as well. But so far, the Bills are back at 1 like they were in week 5 for me when I started these power rankings videos. Let me know what you think about that down in the comments. I think the Bills are deserving of this spot. So if you think I'm wrong, go ahead and bash me in the comments. Bash me in the Discord, wherever you feel like it. But make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I hope you enjoy these power rankings videos. I'm going to keep this nice, short, and sweet. Let me know where you think your team fell is correct or not. And of course, as we always say, guys, keep on grinding.